the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Hey, when you're this good and you make 4 straight super regionals, like, fans are like, all right, this is fun. It's also like the investment, because there's just so many games and you spend so many weekends with Tennessee baseball now that I think fans are just, for me too, like you spend so much more time with Tennessee baseball than you do any of the other big 3. Like, you're just there all the time. You're watching all the time. Like, it's just, I don't know. There's so much buildup. It's why I think baseball, if you're a Braves fan or whoever, like when you finally break through, it's just like, okay, I feel validated. All the time I spent following this team all year long, it just feels sweeter. I think those kind of runs, because there's just more games and there's more blood, sweat, and tears put into it as fans, because it's a long season, it's a grind, and this team is right there in the thick of things. So next one up here, we got hot or not. Hunter Ensley has actually been the most underrated Vol baseball player this season. What say you, sir?
This one was tough for me. I thought about this one a little bit, and I do think he's underrated. Like, he's good. He's been so clutch ever since, like, he's really kind of gotten his major role at UT.
Mhm.
Like, I think obviously that Clemson game last year in the regional, 14 innings, and he's the guy that came up with the big hit. But even if you think this year, like the Florida game where he had like 7 RBIs, like absolutely went bonkers in that game. Like, there's a reason why this guy has a nickname now of Big Game Hunter. Like, he's good. And I was talking to Sean Barrows, the sports information director at Tennessee for Tennessee baseball recently. And we were discussing, I was trying to figure out what feature stories I wanted to line up for BIR before the postseason. And we were kind of discussing different players and their stories and stuff like that. And we both kind of were just talking about like Hunter Ensley. And it's just like, he's been good all season long, but it really feels like nobody's really been talking about how good he's been, because he's got 9 homers on the season. So like, I think a lot of attention goes to those guys that are smacking him out of the park, because, that's where a lot of the attention goes, especially with this Tennessee baseball team of glitz and glamour. But then, if you're really watching and you see guys like Hunter, I mean, he's batting like 285. That's a good batting average. And, he's getting on base and he's come up big for the Vols in many of moments this season, most notably that Florida game on the road, where they fell behind and they had to come back. And he was the benefactor as to why they did. And he's a beast, man. There's some guys that I think there's a lot of guys on this team that are not talked about as much. I think I mentioned Cal Stark earlier, but if I did, Cal Stark has been great. And I don't know if he's underrated, but he's definitely not being talked about as much as he should be. And after this past weekend, I think he showed why he should probably be being talked about more, because he's really flipping that lineup over. And, there's guys on this team that people I don't think are talking about as much as the Christian Moores, the Blake Burks, the Billy Amicks, and Kavaris Tears or Dylan Dreilings that are really contributing and making big moments. I mean, you mentioned Peebles earlier. This is a guy who's stepped in and he's come up with some big moments. Dalton Bargo is a guy who just kind of got plugged and played and, the DH position or third base, and he's come up with big moments. Like, it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. I think there's a lot of guys on this team that make the team versatile. Yeah. And other dudes than just the stars on this team that are really making this team go.
I agree. And it's also like he moved up to the 5th spot, and it's one of those where I think the added pressure of Hunter taking the next step, because we know what he is defensively. He's always been great in center field. And I think he's maybe even undervalued there a little bit with just what he brings defensively for Tennessee every weekend. But it's also like he's a different kind of hitter for Tennessee. Like, he's a line drive guy. He's clutch, like you mentioned. But like, I just love that he brings something different in the middle of the order, because you have Billy, Blake, and Christian who are just so power heavy. And then you have Tears right behind him. So you can't really pitch around Ensley, and you have this power guy right behind him, and he's been knocked in by Tears. You had a 3-run homer over the weekend that he was on base for. Like, he gets on with walks. He gets on with it. Like, I just think Hunter is just maybe someone easily overlooked by fans and what he's done this year, because I think he's actually a much better hitter at this point than Vol fans give him credit for. And if he's back for one more year next year, his senior year, I mean, I think he's going to be a gigantic piece, and who knows what he can be 3 years of just a bunch of playing time and in this Tennessee system, because I think he's been awesome. So I don't know if he's the most underrated, but I do think he has been one of the more underrated Tennessee Vols this year.
You got to have production out of the middle of your lineup, man. And if guys like that are getting on base, it really helps, because, you can't just rely top heavy on the lineup and hope that guys contribute. I mean, Tony Vitello's been saying that all season long. They need guys to contribute like every guy's going to have his game, but you got to get production out of the middle of the lineup. And when you got a guy like Hunter Ensley there, it's a good spot for the Vols to be in. So,
absolutely. Next up here, hot or not, Chaz Lanier has to be better than Dalton Knecht for the Vols to make the Final Four next season. What say you, sir?
No. That's just no for me. I mean, we're talking what Dalton did last year, man. Like, insane. Like, greatest individual basketball season that people have seen out of a Vol in quite some time. I mean, Grant Williams obviously was absolutely fantastic too, but
he wasn't even close to Dalton. Like, Dalton's going to be the highest drafted Tennessee Volunteer since Dale Ellis in 1983.
Yeah. This guy's a lottery pick. He was fantastic, putting up 40 points a game. Like, to expect that Lanier is going to be as good as Dalton Knecht, I'm not going to say it's a pipe dream. Obviously.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.